Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to this webinar. I appreciate you joining us today. This is we're Aimbridge Energy. I'm going to touch real briefly on who we are here in a minute. This presentation is called Clean Energy and EV Compliance for Colorado Automotive Dealerships: How to Enhance Brand Value in a Turbulent Environment. So that's going to be a focus for us, is just kind of helping you understand what this environment looks like. We're doing a lot of these presentations nationally. This short presentation is really focused on Colorado. This is one of our primary target markets right now, so we really wanted to dig deep in here, and we've got a lot of history here, as you'll see. My name is David Lindsay. I'm the Chief Technology Architect for Aimbridge Energy Group, and I'm also a former dealership general manager here in the market. I ran a large pre-owned dealership and service center here for, boy, well over 10 years. So very, very familiar with the kind of the core operational energy, facility, utility management challenges that we run into as dealerships. And I even want to touch on one of the challenges we always had as a dealer, is that public brand image and that kind of the facade of the dealership approach, and we're going to talk about what clean energy kind of modifications can do to that look and feel. I also have with me Tom Osterman. He's the president of Aimbridge Energy Group. Tom, you want to just give a quick intro and brief background?
Absolutely. Thank you, David. And thanks to everybody for attending today. I appreciate your time. My background is design and development of energy systems, particularly in the telecom and data center environment. I managed a national footprint design build firm for 20 years, building data centers and telecom power systems. Also managed product development and engineering for a DC specific power system. So I have a lot of experience with the actual technology side, but also the construction management and permitting and site design side of it. Excited to participate today.
All right, great. Thank you, Tom. All right, so let's jump in real quick. We're gonna try to keep this to 20 minutes or so, and 10 minutes for Q&A. If that fluctuates a little bit, we apologize. We're trying to fit a lot into a short window here, so we're gonna do our best. So we want to here's a quick little look at the agenda. I will refresh you a little bit on Aimbridge Energy Group, just one slide on that. And then the meat of this, we want to get into the clean energy and the EV compliance environment here in Colorado, and kind of what we're seeing and what I know you're probably seeing as well. But then what that means in terms of utility cost management, resiliency, and even a brand refresh and that clean energy awareness look for your dealership. And then we're going to touch on the funding assistance and the grant options here in Colorado, and kind of how we can help with that process. We're going to end up with Q&A. Like I said, I'd like to have as much time as we can for some Q&A at the end. I know there's probably a lot of questions out there. But throughout the presentation, if you could please drop your Q&A in the Q&A section here on Zoom. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. We will get to those at the end. So drop your questions in. If we don't get to them at the end, we'll just follow up with you afterwards. That's traditionally been our approach, and we get a hold of everybody and we get all of these questions answered. I've also got Brian behind the scenes. So you're going to see 4 poll questions pop up. So just 4 multiple choice poll questions. So if you please would answer those really help us understand kind of what the audience is looking for and where the needs are. And then we'll move on from there. So I think poll number 1 will be popping up here in a minute. All right, so let's move forward. So what I want to talk about here is this tagline. So the subtitle of this webinar is How to Enhance Brand Value in a Turbulent Environment. So that's a little different than something you would see when it comes to an actual compliance-based webinar. So I just want to touch on, I recently read a story. This was pretty interesting. It was very timely. It's an Audi dealership in Minneapolis. And they were really forced to scale very quickly based on just EV charging infrastructure demands from customers and from the compliance side. And so this was in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The regulations there were pretty strict, and they were pushing forward a need to get a certain number of EV chargers based on the number of parking spots and inventory spaces, which is very, very similar to what we're seeing in Colorado. And it turns out that the additional electrical support needed for this new AC load, and I think it was like 25 additional EV chargers added to the lot, really ended up meaning that they needed to install an entirely new electrical transformer, and that's the main service entrance to the building. So massive electrical upgrade needed to happen in order to support this. And if you look at that, that could be upwards of $100,000 plus additional cost to a project like this. So this dealership was obviously shocked. They were upset. They were concerned. They kind of put the whole project on pause, tried to reevaluate, and I'm not sure exactly where they ended up, but it made me think about how well our solutions and these optional solutions with renewable energy can really help with these projects. So today we want to kind of discuss a better way to support that EV charger installation requirement that's coming up. Um, and so, let's talk about this turbulent environment and kind of what that means. So the demand and the compliance are creating this turbulent environment. So what we want to present is the idea of solving that with a better, more efficient, clean energy DC microgrid type of platform and enhance that brand value. And so the picture you see here is a rendering of a dealership project we currently have underway in Lakewood, Colorado. We're going to touch on this a little bit further on, but this is a solar smart flower we call a solar structure. And you can kind of just see the presence that gives to this dealership project that we're working on. So we really want to kind of pound on that because I think it's a really important differentiation for what we can do in the marketplace. So Aimbridge Energy Group, there's kind of four main areas, topic areas that we really focus on. We're product providers, we are consultants and industry experts, we're system integration experts, so existing building management systems, reporting software, everything about the integration side we're a part of. And then we're operational efficiency professionals and branding experts. So because we've run these businesses, we want to be your partner. Really, the goal here is to be a partner for dealerships in Colorado from project start to finish, all the way through reporting and consulting. So let's jump into clean energy and EV compliance. There's two main categories here. One is the demand side, the demand from your OEMs, from customers, et cetera, for installation of chargers, and the other is compliance. On the demand side, we've got quite a few studies we've done on this. This is one slide I think sums this up the best. This is an Experian market trends report from Q4 2024. And so this just shows you the actual trend of new retail registrations by fuel type. So ICE vehicles versus EVs. And so here you can see electric and electric hybrids made up almost 19% of new vehicle registrations from 2024. So we're approaching 20% of the entire market new vehicle registrations. And I think we're just chatting the other day, this is growing quite a bit in 2025 as well. And so this is up around 9%. And then you can see the reverse of this is that the gasoline vehicle registrations are now down under 65% up here in the corner for the first time ever. So that trend will continue to shift. EV chargers will need to be installed on a regular basis. So this is a lot of work on our side to try to figure this stuff out. And we're really experts in this nationally, and really in Colorado is where we want to focus on this. So we've spent a lot of time looking at the state infrastructure for their compliance and regulatory bills. And I won't read through this in detail, but there's two primary House bills driving the regulations in the state of Colorado. House Bill or HB 23-1233 and HB 21-1286. And the main difference there is 1233 is tied to EV clean energy equipment and new building projects. So the major building refresh and the new building builds, all of the EV infrastructure and the clean energy building mandates are tied to that bill. Whereas 1286 is really your existing buildings and the greenhouse gas emissions kind of mandates and the measurements that are required in the market today. And so those are typically targeting buildings over 50,000 square feet. So if you've got a larger dealership, this is going to be an area you're going to need to be in compliance. The goals are 7% reduction from 2021 standards by 2026 and 20% by 2030. So we assist with all of this kind of thing. So this is kind of right in our wheelhouse in terms of that renewable energy replacement for the core utility grid powering of these systems. And then we're going to get into a few more of the details on the cities. I do want to touch on Regulation 28. You'll see here at the bottom of House Bill 1286. So this is really the regulation driving the clean energy mandates and the greenhouse gas emissions for existing buildings. I think this is one that a lot of people are running into right now. So we do extensive reporting on that. So we wanted to pull out a couple of cities and just kind of show you kind of a little bit of the detail on the city mandates that are stemming from this. And so in the city of Lakewood, there is a zoning ordinance. This is where our project is right now. So we're getting very familiar with this. It's called 17.8.5. And this is really directed at any commercial development with 10 plus off-street parking spaces, which is pretty much going to be everybody. So everybody on this call is probably going to land in this category. And 2% of those spaces must be designated EV charging. And this is very similar to what the Audi dealership had to deal with in Minnesota. And so that's level 2 chargers. 2% must be built in and ready to go. And another 18% must be EV ready. So we're going to talk about what that means, the conduit and the trench work that needs to be done ahead of time for that, and some of the funding and the grant opportunities that are tied to the pre-work on these things. And then the spots must be striped, signage, and that type of thing. So these are the kinds of things we walk you through as we consult with you in these projects. The other city we wanted to look at is, just because it's a large, significant city in this space, is the city and county of Denver. They're tied, it's energy code C40513. And what's interesting about this, it is tied to the IECC, or the International Energy Conservation Code national policy. And so a lot of these cities will kind of inherit and adopt some of the initial policies that are being set up at the federal level. And not that that's interesting to anybody, but it is to us, because we now start to understand exactly where these policies are going to go. And this one's a little bit different. It's a 10-10-5. 10% must be EV ready. So that's conduit, wiring, panel capacity. 10% must be a conduit ready electrical panel in place, but not necessarily having wiring. And then another 5% is full circuit wiring, but no chargers. So what's interesting here is the city of county of Denver is not necessarily mandating installed EV chargers, but they are really focused on the pre-work that needs to be done to get all of the lots up to speed and ready to go. So the last one, the 5%, basically just means you got to bring an EV charger and plug it in. There's no wiring or electrical work needed. That's already done. So the city and county of Denver, if you're in that area, a little different than Lakewood and some of the other jurisdictions. Tom is going to just touch real quick. We got a couple slides here on the national side of this. Like I mentioned, the IECC and the National Electric Code. These are interesting kind of touch points on this. So Tom, would you jump into this real quick for us?
Absolutely. Thank you, David. As David mentioned, and is a common question that we get from clients is, where did all this come from? This is
Yeah.
something new. We haven't had to deal with this before. We just want to pull a building permit to expand our dealership or upgrade it, refresh it, or whatever. All of a sudden, there's this energy overlay that wasn't required last time we did some building work. And as David mentioned, this is really being driven on a global, international scale with energy code, smart energy management, and building design being adopted by multiple countries, and we're no exception. And this flows through the federal policy and all the different safety and regulatory aspects and agencies, and then right to the local municipalities and AHJs. So these are the entities that you're applying for a building permit with for permission to implement upgrades or new construction or changes to your footprint, your dealership. A key one for us, obviously, for electricity and energy systems is the National Electric Code. So we're held in compliance with this for any building wiring implementation, electrician work, and local inspection to the code for compliance. And that could be at a state electrical level or local city, municipal level from an electrical inspection perspective. The National Electric Code is updated every few years, and local agencies then adopt the current code. So the National Electric Code isn't yet mandating EV charging set aside capacity, but local municipalities and states are. So they're kind of out ahead of the National Electric Code, which is unique. It usually is the reverse. So we're seeing mandates for pre-reserved circuit design capacity to support EV charging load in order to comply with local code to get a building permit. U.S. Department of Transportation, very specific definition of electric vehicle infrastructure requirements. U.S. Department of Energy programs there in terms of best practices, standards, as well as in the past, a lot of grant funding came from the U.S. DOE. So at the international level, this is all coming down to how do we design and implement residential and commercial structure design, building, permitting, and implementation to green them up, to have lower energy consumption per square foot, to decarbonize and try to avoid natural gas, propane heating, and hot water heating, and carbon-based fuel support, to encourage renewable energy on site and incentivize that, and also to add capacity, as we're talking about for EV charging, and incentivize decarbonization of transportation by going to an EV implementation. So all these standards cover lighting, insulation, renewable energy, um, design of airflow, efficiency of the envelope of the building, a lot of just reduction in energy use per square footage and green performance and in terms of energy efficiency. Um, Utility cost management and resiliency is kind of the follow-on topic. We've talked about code compliance, changes to local state energy codes. So what do we do about that if we have to be held accountable to this to accomplish a building project approval? What are our tools in the toolkit to be able to accomplish compliance and to do so cost effectively? So our approach is what's called a microgrid. This is basically an analogy to the greater utility grid. You've got distant electrical generation facilities, which could be hydro, nuclear, coal plants, typically long distances away, long haul transmission corridors to bring that power closer to residential and commercial areas, and then local substations for step down and lower voltage, and then feeding power to your meter base and service entrance for your facility. So that's the greater grid. A microgrid is the same thing in a box. It's basically similar attributes, but on-site integrated into your facility. And that includes generation, typically with solar, storage with lithium-based energy storage battery systems integrated into a cabinet, and then smart energy distribution and management and control. So this design includes really high efficiency by being a direct current configuration instead of alternating current. Allows us to feed loads directly with direct DC, which is much more efficient than all the conversions from DC to AC and back to DC. So that provides efficiency, storage, resiliency, a bunch of benefits to having this on site in your facility. This is a power flow chart, kind of wiring diagram, if you will, and it shows how solar power is generating power from the sun. We're feeding a DC internal control and conversion system, charging internal batteries, and then providing direct load support to dealership loads. And what we're doing here is we're not generating power to push it back on the grid to get paid for that power, which is traditional rooftop solar. This is a behind the meter system where we're avoiding paying the utility for power. We're self-generating, storing, and distributing this to pick up these new high density loads, such as EV charging, as well as high intensity lot lighting, which is near and dear to most dealerships in terms of differentiation, security, and presentation of inventory. So we've got a lot higher lighting load in a lot of these lot locations. So what this does is it allows us to decide what energy we self-generate and provide to our loads and when we do it. And that's really important for utility markets that have peak charging, where from 4 p.m., let's say to 9 p.m., you're charged a much higher utility rate if you draw energy at that time frame. Some utilities have that in the morning as well. So what we want to do is not draw power from the utility during those peak charge intervals, and instead self-generate and self-support our load with our own on-site renewable generation. So it's a play to avoid paying high charges to the utility and to pick up as much load as possible on-site. So this is an interesting version of the slide. Utility outage or no renewable available. Well, what happens to our load if there's a power outage from the utility and maybe we don't have solar generation or it's evening time? We've got deep energy storage that provides the ability to continue to run those loads without utility support and or with renewable support not being present. This is a resiliency and kind of energy independence value. It's a battery backup system, essentially. And for shorter duration outages or issues, it can prevent use of standby generators as an alternative, provides ride through if there's any interruptions, and just provides a stable business environment for all of your IT, computer infrastructure, and critical security and surveillance and access control systems. So it provides that added value that traditional rooftop solar does not provide. So cost issues and return on investment. Um, Pretty big difference in terms of what you can pay from a peak charge perspective and then basic normal kilowatt hour costs for your electrical use. And the older model with that rooftop solar where you're just selling power back to the utility, that model is dying very quickly, where we used to be able to sell energy back at a pretty healthy rate and get paid for that. And now the utility companies have dropped dramatically what they're willing to pay. In many cases, they're not paying hardly anything at all, and they're charging you for grid access, for the right to push power back to the grid. So our approach with this integrated DC storage and microgrid configuration is a much more cost-effective total approach from an ROI perspective and utility cost perspective, being behind the meter. So we're going to pivot back to some interesting kind of case study information David's going to share in terms of how we implemented this with a client project in the Denver market and how compelling this approach was in terms of the benefit to that client. Take it away, David.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Yeah. So this is one of my favorite little sections here. We've got a couple slides. Just want to show some more renderings of this project we have underway. And this is a branding topic. So we want to talk about what a clean energy look and feel can do for your dealership. But this is just one of those things that kind of comes out of this project once we're all said and done. And so, on the left here, we see the used car gorilla. We've all seen this before. It's kind of that iconic look and the classic used car nomenclature and sort of standard look. Well, we don't want to live that way anymore. And I'm sure nobody on the call does. We're not probably using that. But if you compare that to the kind of the iconic rendering of the smart flower on the right side, you can see the significant difference in terms of what your customers and what the general street traffic would see when they come by and look at that. And I love this quote, in the hyper-competitive landscape of auto dealerships, differentiation has transitioned from a competitive advantage to survival necessity. So that, I mean, that's just powerful. And this is American Management Services report. These guys do quite a nice job of doing studies of the various industries and markets. So this is really becoming front and center for dealerships, is how do I brand myself and look different from everybody else? And we believe this is a great way to do it. This is another rendering. So here's a street view kind of looking down on the solar structure that will be placed at this project we're managing. So this solar structure is a real set of solar panels. This captures the sun, actually feeds the system with solar energy. So it's not just for looks. It actually unfurls in the morning as the sun comes up and it tracks the sun throughout the day. It's very, very cool, very iconic look for a dealership. And then at the end of the day, it kind of closes back up. One of the things we're really promoting for this dealership is the ability to kind of have opening moments when folks can come out and kind of watch it open and be a part of the visibility of the dealership. This will be right along a major street, and so they'll see this on a regular basis. EV chargers are a big part of the deployment here, obviously. So we promote everything from public-facing EV charging, where you bring the public onto your lot and they charge and they browse the inventory and they get to see what you've got in inventory on your lot. And and maybe it's a side little revenue stream, but really it's just a way of kind of promoting that you're green, that you're actually moving down this path. And as we discussed, it gets you into compliance with some of the EV charging installations you're going to need to have. And then, of course, these can go in the back of the lot to charge your inventory, charge in your service center, et cetera. So EV charging is a big part of this deployment. Lot lighting, interior and exterior lighting, big deal. So the LED lighting that we're promoting that we'll be installing here is very powerful DC generated LED lighting. And really, once this is installed, that lot will be almost like it looks like it's daylight during the evening hours when it's dark out. So we've seen these lights in effect. We've installed them in various places, and we see what the difference is, both inside and out. It's pretty significant. And so the lighting structure here also gets you into compliance from a clean energy standpoint with your building compliance issues, and obviously helps tremendously with your branding and your dealership presentation. So we also want to wrap up. So we're going to wrap up here. This is the Aimbridge and funding assistance options. There are some sort of important grant and funding initiatives that are available in the marketplace in Colorado. We're just going to touch on a few of them. A lot of this stuff is much deeper and much more involved than we can get through in a 30-minute webinar. But we want to touch on a few of these. And some of these you might be very familiar with. The big one here in Colorado is the Colorado Energy Office's grant called Charge Ahead Colorado. And so we're full compliance with this. Our EV chargers match up exactly with what they would need for actual compliance and funding. So we work in direct alignment with them. And basically what this says is you can get up to $6,250 per level 2 port. And if you do a dual port installation, so that's a single charger with ports on both sides, that can go up to $12,500. So you just double that. So you can get a $12,500 credit for a dual port installation, which we do as well. And then they'll cover up to 80 to 90% of the total project cost. So that's the additional conduit, utility work, electrical wiring, that kind of thing. So the Charge Ahead Colorado program will cover that additional cost as well, up to 90%. So we help you get that all kind of lined up as well. And then even Xcel Energy is in on this game. So Xcel Energy has a make ready business and EV program set. So they will help with potentially up to 100% of electrical wiring, utility management, and conduit installation costs for these projects. And so that's really the trenching and all that kind of laborious kind of groundwork that needs to happen to get these systems put in. And so we can help you figure out that exact give back and what Xcel can do for you in these particular projects. And then we also help stack that. So there's a grant and advantage stacking. So we can basically put that Xcel Energy program cost coverage with the Charge Ahead Colorado grants and kind of get you the maximum benefit on your investment in these projects. So a lot of complexity there, and we're your partner throughout that. And then finally, project financing, if you want to finance this project. So Aimbridge, we have been, our ownership group has owned many dealerships here in Denver, many businesses here in Denver, I should say, everything from automotive to automotive lending and financing. And so we've got a significant number of lender relationships in the market. We know this market very, very well. And so we can consult on best practices in terms of the different lending options and financing options that are out there in the marketplace. So this is an area we understand the concerns. The stuff can become expensive. And so we consult on that as well throughout. Okay, so we're 25 minutes in. It looks, or 25 minutes in. We do have some time here then for Q&A. We got about 5 minutes left. We could even go over if we need to. So I don't know. I haven't been looking here. It looks like we do have some questions coming in. Tom, do you want to start with anything? I think
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. Thank you, David. And this is one we get all the time. It's probably question number one, number two, because so many people are familiar with rooftop solar. Their question is, does rooftop solar work differently than this particular microgrid approach? And it certainly does. The rooftop solar approach is basically solar panels, typically on the roof. Sometimes they can be on a ground mount array or a shade structure, but usually rooftop. And they're designed to generate AC power that's coupled directly to the utility grid. So it kind of runs the meter backwards, is one way of looking at it. But the goal is to generate power, which is DC output from the solar panels that's converted to AC by a device called an inverter. And then that's connected to the grid and it pushes power back to the grid, which you can get paid for. You're selling power that you're generating back to the utility. Years ago, when that first started to be implemented, there were a lot of state and federal incentives and support that really helped with the return on the investment and justification for funding for these, because there was a pretty high payback from the utility for the energy that you generated. Now that business model has almost gone away, where the amount of kilowatt hour payback cost benefit from the utility is really diminished. And in many cases, it's flipped where you're paying the utility for the right to be able to connect to push power back to the grid, not that it's a revenue source. The other big difference with rooftop solar is there's no energy storage. And if there's a utility outage, a power outage due to weather or some kind of utility fault, then the system has to disconnect itself for safety so you don't feed power back to the utility grid and cause a risk for linemen or staff workers on the grid. And so you could have a beautiful sunny solar day where you could generate a lot of power and continue to run your site, but you can't because it's disconnected if the power goes down. So you don't get that backup function with a rooftop solar approach. So our DC microgrid configuration is behind the meter, which means that we're actually generating power and we're not pushing it back on the grid intentionally. We're avoiding buying power from the grid, and particularly at high peak hour times during the day. So the big part of this, the solar generation is still pretty much technically the same, but adding storage and the ability to store that energy and then redeploy it at certain hours of the day or at night is the game changer here in terms of how this system works. And the other part is to feed these loads directly with DC without converting to AC. And that's an efficiency improvement and a reliability improvement. So it's similar but different. And it shares the common denominator of solar generation on site, but everything else is pretty much different, and its benefits are significant. Now, with this new increasing load at a dealership, which is EV charging and then energy code compliance, where now your natural gas heating may not be allowed, and you're shifting that to electrical HVAC heat pump based heating and cooling, or even hot water heat with a heat pump system, suddenly your electrical load is increasing dramatically for any new generation dealership implementations or new builds that have to comply with new codes.
Tom,
So
I got a
big
question
difference.
here,
Go ahead,
came
David.
up. This is, this one, a couple different folks asked the similar question. What is the process to assess my dealership's electrical capacity for EV infrastructure? And I can tell you just real quickly, and Tom can get into more detail, but so we do a full site audit. We'll meet with you, walk the site, and basically apply a lot of the compliance and regulatory code and uh, mandates that are being pushed forward. Make sure they fit your lot. What, how many spaces do you have? That kind of thing. Full load calculations, evaluate whether you have solar or not on site, so a panel review there. And then we coordinate with Xcel Energy on your utility needs to determine kind of what the current and future capacity will be for this in conjunction with our renewable system. So a full audit and kind of a consultative approach to kind of getting a specific project plan for your project. Tom, is there anything you'd want to add on that?
No, I think that's really a crucial step because an existing dealership and existing load profile, it may have been stable for years, and all of a sudden we're doing something completely different, adding a lot more load, and any change to the structure suddenly brings it out of being grandfathered into new code compliance. And that really takes a site audit and full assessment of the dealership to look at what's there, what's being added, what's coming in the future, and then how to implement a system that makes the most sense. So that site visit, site audit, assessment process is really critical.
Yep. Okay, great. So we're past here, but I think we have, we got one more. I got a couple questions here I'd like to get to. So one of the questions is there a statewide deadline for becoming EV compliant? And yes, there is. It's not a simple answer. It's kind of dependent on the guideline we're referring to. So they definitely vary by mandate. There is a new House Bill 241173. So this one is basically forcing faster permitting for the utilities and for construction evaluation of your lot and everything else. So the permitting process will speed up. The goal was to have this phased in fully by the end of 2025, but for the faster permitting, I'm not sure if we're going to hit that or not. But basically, once you start a project or a major project refresh, that's when the clock starts. And then you've got to be compliant based on the different mandates. So a lot of these are 2025 year end. Some of them roll into 2026. So the bottom line here is it will be very specific to your project and what you're having done. But there are definitely deadlines on these projects that we can help manage for you. Let's see, we have a few more, but I don't want to go too much further over. It's 12, it's 3 minutes past when we were supposed to end. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I want to get the final slide here for contact information. And if any questions we didn't answer, we will be replying to directly. So we'll follow up on any of these Q&A questions that are still sitting out here. You can reach out to us. Primarily, the best way is probably through our auto dealer email address, autodealers@aimbridgeenergy.com. We got a LinkedIn profile. You can go look at us on LinkedIn and certainly our website on the contact form. You can reach out to us that way. And if you did answer these poll questions, we'd love to follow up with you and have a further discussion on your project, and we'll keep going from there. So, oh, and then by the way, in the chat session, there is a link that's been dropped in there if you want to schedule something with us directly. So you'll see that in there as well. So that will be it. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you joining us and spending this 30 minutes or so with us. And we look forward to catching up and talking with you further in detail.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time.